Alright, let's start. One of the things that you've learned about relationship is relationships are difficult. They are difficult. And one of the main reasons they're difficult is no one told us how they work. And no one told us the issues we have to face and the work we have to do to make relationships doable. So almost everyone has a nice, everyone has a difficult relationship except those who are very nice. Nice gets you through, but of course what nice does is it means you're a little bit less of yourself. So relationships do. So I'm going to start the day today reviewing some of the stuff in the book and some of the stuff I did last week. Now, let me talk to you about this book. I started writing this book a couple of years ago, actually further back than that. The first version came out a couple of years ago. When the first version was just photocopied material, because people were coming from a website, they're getting stuff on the website, they're coming with 45 bits of paper. I thought it was ridiculous. So I bound it and just got it photocopied. And in those days I called it Successful Couples. But then a couple of people said to me, Jeff, I can see now that actually all we have to do is follow your book, like a recipe. A couple of avoidant guys actually was really interesting, said that. So I called it the Successful Couples Recipe Book. Now, in some ways it is. If you just follow everything sequentially, it more or less tells you what you need to learn to basically change the way you're relating. But there are a couple of bits that are very hard to change and to work with. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about this morning. First up. No, it's not going to move. It's frozen, of course. Why does it do this? It's pretty useless, isn't it? Don't even know how to close it down. So the first 4 slides are a repetition of last week from a slightly different angle. The biggest problem really is we have different attachment styles, and that dictates our ability to engage. Let's try this. The attachment style distortions. There's nothing wrong with attachment styles. They're themselves not distorted. What happens are distortions that flow from them. So it dictates our ability to engage usefully and skillfully, for example, because we don't know that we're wired a particular way and our partners are wired differently. Secondly, it dictates how urgently we seek connection, if at all. And so that difference is not known. People do not realize they have different concerns about connection. The third thing, it dictates how capably we express affection or love. And so what happens is frequently one partner wants a lot more than the other, and then misreads the fact that they're not getting it as meaning you're not as loving or you're over the top. The next thing is it determines how we view our partners, and is never accurate in doing this unless they tell us. So some classic examples. Well, I've just given one. So let me say that again. If one partner is very affectionate and the other is a wee bit more avoidant, it's very easy for the more affectionate partner to read that the avoidant person is distant, uncaring, cold, doesn't care, and so on. And similarly, the avoidant person can read the person who wants connection as needy, demanding, and so on. And you see, the attachment styles differences mean we misread each other. So we keep misinterpreting what we're each other saying, and we get misunderstandings are plentiful. The final thing I wanted to say about attachment style differences is it impacts on our willingness or optimism about fixing a relationship that's in trouble. Generally speaking, what happens is avoidance. Throw in the towel faster than the anxious style because it's just too difficult. The anxious style, you see, is more geared to connecting. And what will happen is the avoidance style thinks she's over the top. She frequently have avoidance telling me their partners are crazy. It's very, very common. Right? In fact, they've asked me, I think they may have a mental illness, and I think maybe hospitalisation. I've had that. So you can see that. So what happens is the connector is wanting to connect probably more than the avoidant. The anxious person probably wants to connect more than the avoidant. But what will happen is when the anxious style gives up and they become anxious avoidant, then they really have thrown the towel. Then there's no one in the relationship fighting for it. That's a problem. Any questions about the attachment style differences which you've been reading about? Okay. So self-efficacy is the process by which we stay connected to self and we look after our own interests and so on. There are some problems about how that gets distorted. Self-efficacy, it dictates our ability to stay centered when accused, blamed, rocked around, knowing that we cannot control the reactions of another. Now, a person who is securely attached does not get knocked around when the other person has a window. What the secure person says is, oh, they're having a problem. Oh, they're having a big problem. Oh dear, they're telling me I'm part of the problem. Like they get to see the other person's pattern and don't own it. Now that's not easy to do. Most people don't do that well, and the reason is because they've grown up in families where in fact they were more or less forced to take responsibility. So they had people around them modelling taking responsibility for where someone else was at. This next thing, self-efficacy or the lack of it dictates how well we will support ourselves by calmly responding to another and not losing power or taking power. So what happens when the boat gets rocked is normally people either control someone else or go into losing control of themselves. So what they will do is they'll close down, feel terrible, feel that they don't know what to do, feel inadequate, that sort of stuff, or they take charge of things. Now, in general, the person who takes power, if anyone's going to take power, is the avoidant. And if anyone's going to give up power, it's usually the anxious style. As a generalization. There are exceptions, but generally that's true. The last thing about the self-efficacy pattern is that it dictates how confidently we will stay internally empowered or express ourselves in the face of another's energy. So I'm generalizing. I'm really generalizing with that last point. So to stay engaged with yourself when people around you are getting rocked around or trying to rock you around is not easy to do. But that's crucial, because if you don't stay true to yourself, either you get buffeted around by what's going on up there, or you get buffeted around by an implosion in here. Does that make sense? The crucial thing is, if something's going on around you, unless you're doing something absolutely terrible, like you're being abusive or you're being quite inappropriate, generally speaking, if someone around you is having a bad day, even because you just didn't do the dishes, or you forgot to do the vacuuming, or you went around when the bed was made, it doesn't matter what it is, you don't get rocked by it, because if they were solid inside, they wouldn't get rocked either. They would simply say, can we talk about the bed? Or something. They would stay more grounded. Now this is important because I want you to learn not to be rocked around by people external to you, anything external to you. Stay grounded within yourself. You are not responsible for the rest of the world, or even a small portion of it. Now, that slide and this one are connected. Because when we get rocked around in childhood, we take on programming that actually isn't really ours. So, the inner demons and desire control, they dictate our self-beliefs, such as I'm not good enough. Now, I'm not good enough, or variations of that, are almost endemic. There's hardly anyone who doesn't grow up with some sort of distorted self-belief. I'm not good enough, and its variants, like I'm a failure, I'm not important, I'll never succeed, all those things, they're all variations of that. They come from childhood, they don't come from anywhere else. They are not attachment style patterns. You can get huge variations in this within attachment styles. And the people who struggle most in relationship are people who have got self-beliefs that are rocking around internally. Because if they're rocking around internally, what happens is that this gets blown off the page. You cannot stay grounded in yourself if I'm not good enough is predominant. Does that make sense? Now, when you've got a belief like I'm not good enough, it's always got an emotional component to it. In fact, in CBT, the combination of a belief and the emotions that go with it is called a schema. So what happens as we grow up, most of our schemas are originally an emotional problem. So what happens is you develop a lot of your schemas before you're even 3 years old. The longitudinal research done at Christchurch and Dunedin has shown, and they've now got this cohort started in 1972, they showed all the issues these children had in teenage years, in their 20s, and with their own children, could be traced to before they were 3 years old.
So that's when you get into generation patterns. That's when you get into generation patterns.
Yes.
Yep.
I mentioned, I think last week, Murray Bowen, who was a guy who understood this problem, and he started like a school. It was called the Differentiation School. It became known as the Differentiation School. And what he means by the use of that word, when you develop an ego as a child, you've got to learn to trim it, to basically shape it to be self-focused. But the trouble is we live in a culture that says being self-focused is actually a problem. It is not a problem. What happens to many people is they become super self-focused because actually underneath the self, they're insecure. So people like narcissists become super self-focused because actually they're insecure about the self. So they actually become controlling and dominant in order to promote themselves. But when you think about it, if you're not self-focused, where are you? The only person you can speak for is yourself. The only person who knows what's best for you is yourself. It's ridiculous to think that self is not important. Self is crucially important. Because if you know yourself well, you can then negotiate. But if you're not in touch with self, you can't do that. And this is the stuff that gets in the way of it. So, for example, if you've got I'm not good enough as a belief, you might have a feeling of anxiety that goes with that. For example, I stand up in front of an audience and I get anxious because they may be considering that I'm not good enough. So if you've got that running, you'll get an anxiety, and what is also underneath that anxiety is the fear of being shamed. And we talked about this last week. Almost everyone grows up being shamed by circumstance they grow up in. So behind almost all emotions is actually the fear of being shamed. And that's hard to work with, particularly when it's invisible. If you talk to most people about how you're doing with your shame, they look at you as if you're off another planet. The third thing, it dictates our ability to own our emotions. So not only have we got to feel, say, the anxiety around I'm not good enough, we then have to own them. Because the only way to deal with these underlying emotions and beliefs that go with them is to own it and say, okay, I can see that. I can see I'm not good enough running. I'm not going to let that rule my life. So every time it comes up, oh, here I go again. I'm into I'm not good enough. So you just sit with it, and over time, what happens when you own it like that is it diminishes. It's only got power when it's not seen and not attended to. Next thing, it dictates our ability to determine whatever needs these emotions are alerting us to. Generally speaking, our emotions are a pattern from the past. That's why they're called emotions. The difference between emotions and feelings are that feelings are a current readout on what we want. So for example, let's suppose we want a hug. What will happen is if we're anxious, the past, about asking for a hug, we won't get the need for a hug, the feeling-based need now, met. So what happens is past emotions dictate the way our feelings are listened to and addressed. Now this is a problem because it's a particular problem for avoidance, for example, when they know they need to do more connecting in their lives. But connecting is awkward. Like, it brings up a discomfort, which is past. However, they also know they want connection and they want to be loved, so that they want the feeling of being loved and loving now. That's their need, that's the feeling they want. But the past emotion can trip that up. Are you with me? Very important, because what happens to most people is their emotions run their entire lives. They are like robots from the age of 3 till they drop. Unless you understand your patterns, own them, and decide, I'll meet my needs anyway, despite the discomfort of it, then you're basically operating like a robot. Most people are robots. Lastly, these inner demons, they determine how well we stay calm and centered when others are not. So, once we start to own our patterns, get to see them, so someone says something to you like, well, you weren't very loving today, were you? You say, oh, instead of feeling bad, shame, instead of feeling criticised, instead of feeling attacked, you say, oh, something's going on out there. Oh, something's going on in here. Right, let me just stay within here for a second. I'll just calm this down. Just own it. Let it settle. So, tell me what the problem is out there. Because then you can engage. But most people don't do that. They react. Can you see the pattern? This is what we all get caught in. And we talked about last week, there's a big problem here, and that is we have not been trained to do things functionally, because most people we grew up with weren't doing it either. So, the relating skills we require are the bridge between ourselves and others that unfortunately most of us didn't grow up with. So this determines our ability to remain calm when listening. So for example, number 3, the previous slide, will trip you up if the other person, when you're trying to listen to them, says something that rocks your boat. So the first thing that we do frequently is our relating skills aren't good enough to stop the boat being rocked, and then we start rocking up, telling them unpleasant things, or disappearing. The relating skills determines our ability to express our emotions usefully. So it's fine to say, I'm feeling a little bit unloved today, I'm feeling a bit distant from you, can we have a hug? Now you can see that means you're owning the emotion, you're owning the disconnection, and you're saying, can I do something about it? Can I reach out? There's no one else caught up in this. You're not saying, you haven't given me a hug today, or where have you been all day? Because what happens is we tend to put the problem out there because we don't own it in here.
So you don't own the need.
Don't own the need. So we don't own the need that we have, say, for connection, for affection. We're not good at that. We somehow get with a partner and we expect them miraculously, they've gone through this brilliant course on connection with people like me, and for the rest of our time together they're going to be really good, they're going to initiate hugs, they're going to do all the nice things, they're going to miraculously do all this, and all I've got to do is stand around and wait for it to happen. And we do behave as if that's the way it operates. Third thing, these relationship skills, or the lack of them, determines our ability to listen so that others feel heard and understood. Now the truth is very, very few people are being raised to really listen well. And also very few have been raised to speak for themselves. So if my partner isn't giving me enough affection, and I need to say, I would like a hug, what most people do is say, you haven't hugged me recently. They've got to, so coming into yourself and saying, where I'm at is I would like a hug, means you're owning what's going on inside, and then they clearly know what your need is, instead of being told there's something wrong with them, so they'll go into a defensive pattern, they'll feel criticised, their shame buttons will be triggered, and off we go.
How do you manage when you may say something like that and the other person still brings it, and it still will say, so you're telling me I haven't hugged you enough, you're telling me that I don't love you enough?
Yes.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Or, maybe it's because I'm being at work, maybe it's because, but some people will, read
Correct.
that way anyway.
That's correct.
No matter how you put it. How do you manage that?
So what Laura's saying is, what if no words seem to work? And that can be true. It can be true because even if I say, oh, I haven't had a hug with you today, I'd like a hug, they can still hear they're responsible that I haven't had a hug, right? That's what you're saying. They still take ownership even when I've not wanted to take ownership. And there's a good strategy for that. We're going to look at it later on. I'll quickly give you an insight now. You prefix what you're saying because you know that's going to be their problem, and so you prefix it. So you say, okay, can I, Sam, can I tell you something's going on for me? I'd really, really like a hug. I haven't had one for a while. This is about me, so would you be willing to? So what you do is you do enough ownership so they get clearly settled, so they don't get rattled. We'll talk more about that later on. That's a very common problem, Laura. So if in fact, even if you state that it's about you, well, it's true. Many people will still react.
But the more likely you own it, the more likely you are to diffuse.
Yes.
And so the more owning things is remarkable in diffusing emotional situations.
Yes. So when you do that intro, it's like an extension to the owning.
Yeah.
It's really saying, actually, something's going on in me, and what I'd like to do is, would you come to this party with me? You're sort of saying that. It's a very good question, because it's difficult. That's why it's really useful to learn this stuff with your partner instead of on your own. Because it really takes two to tango to make it work well. And finally, I've said that. So determines how we stay calm and support another who is not calm. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to split into groups for a second. And what I'd like you to do is to split into the groups of the same attachment styles. Fundamentally, that's along gender lines, but does anyone not know their attachment style? Oh yes, Chris has got a variety of styles. You have to pick which one, Chris. And you actually, it's not rare to have that. I'll just tell you this very quick little story. This week I had a couple who came to me, and they're both fundamentally avoidants. Now, it's very rare for two of the same attachment style to be together. Almost always avoidance attract anxious types and anxious avoidance. But what happens when you've got that happening is eventually someone starts to become anxious. In other words, the more disconnected you become, the more nothing's happening. Eventually, one person starts to be concerned about the relationship. They start the anxious style. It raises the interesting question, can we change styles? And I think the answer is yes, but not so often is my thought. Probably not so often. So here's what I'd like you to do when you get together. I'd like you to talk about what you now know about you from what we've done, from the reading you've done, and from this, which is really a repetition of last week in a different format. I want you to talk about what you're knowing, rather because I want you to hear what others are coming up with as insights. Because the truth is, when we start learning about our attention style as patterns, we're really we're really just looking at the tip of the iceberg. The iceberg is quite big, and listening to other people and what they've discovered about themselves often gives you insight into bits you might have overlooked. Okay, we'll start there.